Welcome everybody to our Selecting a Stand Location module brought to you by Serviceside. I'm Toren, the Marketing and Media Manager, and today we're going to be breaking down this piece of timber and how you would go about selecting a stand location based off of different variables. So we're going to get to it. If you look behind me here, you can see how thick this location is, and one of the big things that I think people struggle with, especially just getting into bow hunting or even muzzleloader or rifle hunting for that matter, is understanding the difference between nighttime movement and daytime movement. So a mature buck isn't going to move through an area where you can simply just walk straight through it without running into any type of brush, security cover, things like that in daylight. So you can't shoot them at night legally. The best thing you got to do is find where they're moving and where they feel comfortable moving in daylight. And that is 100% based on security cover. What makes this location really nice is we have a terrain feature that slopes up this hill that direction and basically funnels straight down into here where we're at. And then over in this direction, we have the exact same thing. It's a hollow that funnels down into basically this pinch point here. So not only do you have the terrain working in your favor, you have a pinch point, and then down below us is going to be your nighttime food source. So you're looking at this area as basically a staging, congregating area where a more mature animal or even a 2.5-year-old buck is going to stay until he filters down through the more open timber under the security of darkness. So if you look back through here, you can see that there's tons of buck rubs in here. And like I said, that's usually translates right over into a staging area, especially with all this thick cover. But the other feature that really makes this spot really hot is that there's a bedding location directly above here. So they'll move from the bedding location down the mountain, stage here, feed under these oaks. We have some red oaks in here, we have some white oaks in here, and then work their way out to the ag. All right, so with staging areas, a lot of times, like I mentioned before, you're going to see a large amount of buck rubs in a single location. But what you really want to focus on in your postseason scouting is when you look back here, you can see that the security cover is pretty much running almost the whole way down this knob. So like I said before, they're going to funnel down into this location, stage here till right before dark, and then work their way out to the food for the evening. The tricky thing about these locations, especially here, is you have the ridge up on top of the mountain. Your thermals are going to be going up that mountain. So you really got to make sure that you're playing the wind and you're being aware of how the thermals are going to be working. So let's say it's an early October hunt and the thermals are going to switch around that 5:30 time frame. You may want to wait until the last half hour, 45 minutes to really get into this location because you're banking on that last 15 minutes of the deer making their way down to this point before they go out and feed. Now, once it starts getting later on in the season, all right, then you can start getting in earlier and being more aggressive with your movements and your stand selection in the various area here. We were talking about earlier what makes this terrain advantageous, one for the deer and then two for the hunter. So if you look back behind us, you can see that going back that direction, the woods really start to open up. If I had a rifle, I could pretty much shoot 100 yards in that direction, picking my way through the trees. However, if you look over my left shoulder here and you look up this section of the ridge, you can't shoot more than 30 yards from where I'm standing. This is the kind of habitat that you want to look for, that deer are going to feel comfortable moving, traversing in daylight, whether it's on the edge of this thick stuff or directly through it. What makes this location for the hunter tricky is the thermals, like we talked about earlier. So during the majority of the day, 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock in the October timeframe, the thermals are going to be pushing up the mountain. The deer are going to be bedded up on that mountain, smelling everything that's down below them. Right now, if there's deer above us, they can smell us. And what they'll do is they'll face up the mountain, watching downwind of them for potentially any coyotes, predators that might come in behind them. They'll see them and then they can bounce out of their exit routes of their bed. As a hunter, what you want to do is you want to walk that fine line. Let's say the deer are bedded right up above us on this knob. What we want to do is we want to get off maybe 40 to 60 yards in that direction so that our wind is blowing just past them and they'll come here and we're going to be looking at basically almost a right angle of where we're going to be looking for our shot. Or we want to go on that side and then the exact same principle applies. As a hunter, you want to be seeing how you can really skirt the line between where the deer feel comfortable and getting as close as possible to them without stepping over that line and then blowing them out. Again, you're looking at a staging area. If we just take kind of a spin over here, you can see all these striped maples in here have been rubbed year after year, and there's some really, really good rubs in here. This tells you that this location deer feel comfortable in year after year. This is something that you can go to every year and probably have a really good chance at being successful. So what I want to do now is I want to take you through setups for this particular spot. Now, typically what you want to do is you want to start in a non-aggressive manner, least invasive, and then work your way in getting more aggressive. Like we mentioned earlier, we are expecting the deer to be bedded directly above us in this location here. Then checking the thermals coming up the mountain and then working their way through this thicket into this staging area down here. So this is our least invasive spot. Quad oak is going to be our kill tree here. All the hard massed food sources that we have in here. So we got a red oak over there, we got a red oak over there, we got a chestnut oak here, we got a white oak in the back. What we're looking for here is this to be an early season destination location where deer are gonna come off bedding, stage in this location, feed on acorns before they go out to the ag in the lowlands. We are well back from the main staging location, so we can hunt this even with the thermals, potentially going up in the mountains, so we can get in here a little bit earlier. We can get in here and not have a major impact on where the deer are bedded in this location. So with north being that way and south being back behind the camera, you can hunt this on an east wind, you can hunt this on a west wind, you can really hunt it on a south wind because we're looking at the bedding location to be back over here over my right shoulder. There's going to be some deer traveling through there, but it's not something that I would be really concerned about. I'd still hunt this location pretty much almost on any wind. However, you have to worry about deer getting here early enough in daylight to get a shot. That's why I'd really concentrate this location on an early season hunt. Also, what the mast is doing that time of year. So maybe it's a rough year for red oaks. Deer aren't even coming into this location. Yeah, we got a white oak back here that they may be targeting, but they might not be. So that's, just keep that in the back of your mind. With these destination locations that are a little bit farther away, you might only have a short window to hunt them as compared to a more aggressive sit like back there. All right, so we are in our less aggressive setup. This is kind of the intermediate area. And this hickory tree right here behind us is our kill tree. We're only 50 yards away from our most aggressive setup. And sometimes that's only as far as you have to go to get into a situation where you're not putting as much pressure on the deer. So what makes this setup less aggressive is based upon where the deer are located and how offset we are. So the deer are going to be bedded up in that general area. What's nice about this setup is we can hunt this with almost any wind direction outside of a southeast south wind. The trade-off with that, and the trade-off with pretty much everything in bow hunting, is that you rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. So yes, you can get more sits in this tree, but it's a lot less likely, or you're not stacking the odds in your favor quite as much because of the variability in the wind. So for example, if you have an east wind blowing this direction, it's very likely that you're going to have deer traveling out to the east so that they can walk with their nose into the wind and potentially circle around you, that you don't even get an opportunity for a shot. Same thing for a west wind. All that kind of stuff plays into an effect, whereas when you get into those more aggressive setups, you stack more of the chips in your favor. So this setup here is going to be the most aggressive setup, and the reason why that is because you are getting directly pretty much into where they're going to be coming down. Now there's a couple factors that you're going to need in your favor to be able to make this successful. That is north, and then back to the camera is going to be south. So what you're going to need in this location is a southeast wind, and you're going to need a relatively high wind in somewhere in 10 mile per hour plus. And what that's going to do is it's going to be blowing your scent up over this knob and basically up into this drainage and then out over top. So we're going to have this entire bedding area cleared. Now anything over in that direction is going to wind us, but all this is going to be safe. So we're expecting deer to come right through this thicket. You can actually, there's a deer trail right here, and then there's another deer trail over there. We're looking for our kill shot to be somewhere right here. They're going to be downwind of us. Never know we're even here. How you would set this up seasonally is I would kind of stay away from this as far as an early season setup, and more wait and use it as a scenario where you might be in a location that you're only going to hunt for a couple days, 1 or 2. You can go in and get aggressive right away. Or if it's the rut and you know that deer are going to be moving around a lot, absolutely use this location for that type of scenario. But I don't think that I would use it for an early October hunt unless you're really going to be bouncing around to different locations. So let's go check out kind of the intermediate location where you're still going to be kind of floating the line, but it's a little bit safer than this here. So that's kind of the breakdown on the good, better, best as far as setup locations and when you should hunt them and how they will affect your hunting scenario.